Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into something really interesting. Today we're looking at hydroponic fodder.
Hydroponic fodder. Sounds kind of futuristic,
It
right?
does, but it's actually a thing. We're talking about growing animal feed, but without using any soil.
And the really cool part is this isn't just some far-off idea. It's already happening.
Exactly. In fact, we found some fascinating research from an Indian company called Shunya Agritech.
They're really pioneering this whole hydroponic fodder thing, especially in areas facing water shortages.
Which makes a lot of sense when you think about it, right? Less reliance on traditional farming.
Yeah, and they've even put together some research on it.
Oh, wow. So we have a company actively working on this and doing the research. That's great. We also have a research paper that takes a deep dive into the nutritional content of this hydroponic fodder. It compares it to the traditional stuff so we can see how they stack up.
That'll be interesting to see.
For sure. But first things first, let's start with the basics for anyone who might not be familiar. What exactly is hydroponic fodder, and how do you grow plants without soil?
Well, imagine, instead of planting seeds in the ground, you're kind of suspending the plant's roots in a nutrient-rich water solution.
Okay, so it's like giving the plants a direct line to all the good stuff they need.
Exactly. And because you're controlling the nutrient solution, you can make sure those plants are getting a perfectly balanced diet.
It's like a custom-made meal plan for your fodder.
Interesting. But that brings up another question. Is this hydroponically grown fodder as nutritious as regular feed?
Well, that's where that research paper comes in. Comparative hydroponics.pdf. That's the one.
Right. The researchers actually looked at hydroponically grown maize fodder, and what they found was pretty amazing.
They found that it had higher levels of key nutrients, more protein, more vitamins, more minerals, all that good stuff, compared to traditionally grown fodder.
Wow. So it's not just about growing fodder differently, it's about potentially growing better fodder. And that's huge, especially when you think about the implications for, say, dairy farmers.
Because better feed for the cows should mean better milk,
You
right?
got it. And in fact, this same study actually found that cows fed with this hydroponic maize fodder.
Wait, they tested it on actual cows? That's cool.
And the cows produce milk with a higher concentration of protein and fat.
Okay, so it's not just theoretical. There are real, tangible benefits to using this type of fodder. Higher quality milk, that's a big deal.
It is. And for dairy farmers, it could mean higher profits too.
Makes sense. But let's be real here for a second. I've always thought these hydroponic systems seem pretty expensive to set up. Am I wrong?
Well, you're not wrong, but companies like Shunya Agritech, they're really trying to make it more accessible. They've got this subscription model.
A subscription for fodder,
Yeah. It's like fodder as a service. So instead of paying a huge amount up front,
which is a big barrier for a lot of farmers, I bet.
absolutely, especially for the smaller farms. But with this model, they just subscribe to the service.
So they get all the benefits of using hydroponic fodder without that big initial investment.
Exactly. And they don't have to worry about maintaining a whole complex system either. It's a pretty smart solution, I think.
It is. And speaking of solutions, this method just makes so much sense in places dealing with water shortages.
Oh, absolutely. Water conservation is a huge advantage with hydroponics.
Huge. Like, how much are we talking?
We're talking using up to 90% less water compared to, your traditional farming methods.
90%. That's amazing. No wonder it's gaining traction in water-scarce areas. What about land use? It's got to be more space efficient than traditional farming, right?
Yeah, totally. One of the other great things about it is that you can grow vertically,
Vertically.
like stacked in layers. So you need way less space to grow the same amount of fodder.
So we're talking more nutritious, less water, and less space. Sounds pretty ideal, honestly. Are there any downsides? What about the energy needed to run these systems?
That is a good point. I mean, you are controlling the environment, right? So you need energy for lighting and temperature control, stuff like that.
So it's a trade-off, kind of?
In a way, yes. But a lot of research is going into making the systems more energy efficient. And honestly, even with the energy use, the overall environmental impact is still looking pretty positive.
Because of the water savings and the fact that you don't need pesticides and herbicides, all that.
Right. It's all connected. And, as we shift toward more renewable energy sources, it's only going to get better.
True, true. Okay, so we've talked about the how and the why of hydroponic fodder, but I'm curious about the who. We mentioned Shunya Agritech earlier. What's their role in all of this?
They're really leading the charge, I'd say, especially when it comes to using technology to, simplify the whole process for farmers.
Okay, now that sounds really interesting. Tell me more about that.
So they're using things like IoT sensors and even AI in their systems.
Wow, high-tech fodder.
Right. But it's super cool. The sensors monitor everything in the system, temperature, humidity, you name it. And then the AI takes all that data.
And uses it to optimize the growing
You
conditions.
got it. So it's like having a 247 digital farmhand, making sure those plants are as happy and healthy as can be.
That's amazing. But what about the farmers themselves? Do they need to be like tech experts to manage all this?
Not at all. That's the beauty of it. Shunya Agritech designed it to be really user-friendly.
Well, thank goodness for that.
Right. They've got these mobile apps, so farmers can keep an eye on everything from their phone.
Oh, wow. So they can be out in the field and still know what's going on with their fodder?
Exactly. They can even adjust some of the settings remotely if they need to.
That's incredible. It sounds like they've really thought of everything to make this technology accessible.
They really have. It's exciting to see.
It is. But zooming out for a sec, this is about more than just growing plants, isn't it? I mean, what kind of impact can this have on a larger scale?
Oh, it has huge implications, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially in places like India, where resources are precious, and the population's growing. Having a reliable, sustainable way to produce animal feed. It's a big deal.
And if it means less reliance on those traditional farming methods that might be struggling, the ones facing water shortages or unpredictable weather.
Exactly. It adds a level of, like, security and stability.
That's a good point. Stability is important.
Absolutely. And it goes even further than that. Shunya Agritech is creating a whole network of these hydroponic fodder centers.
Really? How are they doing that?
They've got a franchise model going, so they're empowering local entrepreneurs to get involved.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about creating opportunities too. That's fantastic.
It is. You're providing a service, you're creating jobs, you're boosting the local economy, and you're promoting a more sustainable way of doing things. It's a win-win all around.
It really does sound like a win-win. So, to kind of wrap things up here, it seems like hydroponic fodder has the potential to be a game changer. We've talked about how it's more nutritious, how it uses resources more efficiently, and now we're seeing how it can even empower farmers and communities.
And let's not forget the technology piece. Using sensors and AI to optimize the entire process, it's incredible.
Right. Who knew growing animal feed could be so high-tech? But seriously, this has been a fascinating deep dive. We've gone from the basics of what hydroponic fodder is all the way to its potential impact on a global scale.
It just goes to show you what's possible when we start thinking outside the box and embracing innovation, especially when it comes to food production.
Absolutely. It's definitely given me a lot to think about. And on that note of optimism and innovation, we'll wrap things up for today. But keep those curiosity gears turning, everyone. Until next time.